to pick up this bulk if we gave them 7 days notice. And I said, you know, I got the exhibit A that was attached to the ordinance. Republic said, I don't know anything about a Second Amendment. So then we did some more research and we found out that the Second Amendment to the contract was never signed. It's just been hanging out there for 2 years, never signed. So I did some more research. And I found out that Republic prepared the Second Amendment to the contract. And yet, Mr. Kidder from Republic wanted to act like he didn't even know what this thing was. Could you send me a copy of it? So that's why our city workers have been picking up trash instead of doing street work for the last 2 years. And they're not happy about it. They've actually had to leave street projects and go out and pick up something that Republic should be picking up. Now, I intend to continue to pursue this because we have an ordinance that says that we should pursue this and try to get the Republic to do what they want to do, because their contract is up in 2021, at the end of 2021. And if we have to start putting out for bids, we're going to. The other thing they didn't want to do is they didn't want to pick up our grass cuttings. Again, they tried to use COVID-19. Well, we did some research on that. I had Max do some research, and we found out that they lost the place where they were dumping this grass. Kurtz Brothers was no longer going to be able to take these grass clippings. So, because they didn't have a place to dump the grass, they were just going to tell the citizens of Lorain, we ain't picking up the grass. Well, I went back to the contract. It says, now the notice they sent out for 2020 said they were supposed to start picking it up on April 13th, but of course, Mr. Kidder went back and said, well, the contract says April 15th. Okay, well, April 15th, start picking up our grass. And hopefully they're picking up our grass. Now, why did I do this? I did this because I don't need a job, okay? And I'm going to continue to hold Republic to the contract. We ain't messing around anymore. We're going to get our garbage picked up. We're not going to have our city workers having to do what the Republic should be doing, and they're going to earn their $4 million. We're going to get somebody else. That's my comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir. Mr. Dr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to the mayor. So for clarification, starting this should be back to normal yard waste pickup, which would be brown paper bags or in a container in the yard waste. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
The yard waste YW.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, sir. Just so you know, that they went out. They did call me like an hour later. They came back and picked up his bulk. They also picked up the yard waste down the street because I was watching to see if the yard waste was going to continue to sit there. So they did pick that up as well.
We're trying.
Thank you. Mr. Kerry.
Yes, the chair's council question for the administration. Since we're talking about this issue, when this fiasco took place, the first day of that pickup on Monday, it happened in South Lorain out in my ward, in the 6th ward. And the problem was a lack of communication. Folks did not place their trash outside. What happened is we sent information, the administration, I share what I can find to let folks know that the city garage will be open 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on several days, so you can take your walk there, public will not be coming. Well, that morning, at 7 in the morning, I was outside taking my trash, and there's always a person in front of my house. So I stopped in the street to stop the truck, and I asked them, are you guys picking up bulk? And they said, yes. Well, this said, folks did not take, in a section of my ward, they did not take their bulk out. A few of them called Republic. Republic told them to go ahead and place your bulk outside. We'll come back on Wednesday and take it up. He did. Well, then on Tuesday, some of them received another call stating that whoever mentioned that for Republic, another Republic employee, they was incorrect and we would not be picking that up. So last Thursday or Wednesday, I rented a trailer with some volunteers and we went to 11 houses and picked up that bulk and threw it in the city garage. And there's still more out there that are calling me that they were never picked up. So I would like to make sure that Republic can at least get that area that was missed, passed through in South Lorain. It wasn't the entire South Lorain, but just a section, mostly the folks behind the old Southview, the old Builder Square area. Those are the folks that really totally missed out.
Thank you. Mayor, Mr. Upton.
Through the chair to Councilman Carrion, I had a conversation middle of the afternoon with senior corporate counsel over in Phoenix, Arizona, and relayed our disappointment that South Lorain had been missed, and we demanded that they make the residents of South Lorain whole. I did miss a call from her prior to this meeting, was not able to get in contact with her, but I have advanced that issue to their senior counsel and implored upon them that they need to make the residents of South Lorain whole. No ands, buts, or questions about it, so I will continue to keep you apprised of the situation. Again, apologies to the residents of South Lorain for the miscommunication.
Thank you. No further comments. We'll move on to item 5, correspondence from directors, boards, and commissions.
Okay, the first item, we have correspondence from Law Director Riley dated April the 15th, advising a partial settlement has been reached in the liquid aluminum sulfate antitrust litigation, and providing a copy of the initial settlement payment of $25,138.97. And all members do have copies.
Mr. Fallis,
Motion to receive and file said correspondence.
support. Ms. Progowski,
Support.
please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B,
Okay, next item, we have correspondence from Councilman Demakia dated April 15th, addressing various issues regarding future operations within the city due to the COVID-19 pandemic, along with a list containing 7 questions.
file. Item C,
The next item, we have Finance Chair Fallis's transmittal of the budget performance report through March 31st of 2020, which was prepared by Auditor Schauber, and all members do have copies.
Mr. Fallis,
Motion to receive and file said correspondence.
Ms. Progowski,
Support.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D,
Okay, the next item, we have correspondence from Chairman Fallis, a transmittal of correspondence to Mayor Bradley, requesting the city begin the process of securing a salary study to assist in making informed decisions with the appropriate level of information on the use of taxpayer funds for salaries. And all members have copies.
Mr. Fallis.
Yeah, just a little background information. At my current employer, at Vacation Land Federal Credit Union, we just started down the process of doing a salary survey. Didn't know anything about that, how that whole process worked. And I learned that when it's done, one of the foundations for doing a salary study is to take a look at a job description and compare that to other employers, so you have an apples to apples comparison, and then obviously take a look at salaries within a geographic area and also employee benefits. In the past year at City Council, we've gotten information on comparable salaries, but we've never got any information relative to job descriptions. So it's taken that whole process a step further, a little deeper. City Council, and I'm sure my colleagues, we're not schooled in HR to do those kinds of things. So I think it would be really a move forward for the city to embark on doing a salary survey, so we can do it in a little bit more detailed and comprehensive manner. Thus, the letter to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Progowski,
Yes, since 2016, I've been asking for this very same thing. At Ford, we have someone called a wage and cost analyst, where we go by, and I wanted to take a look at all of the jobs and see what had overlapping duties. It's a shame that it would take up until this point for everybody to get on board with this. If you go and check the minutes from previous meetings, you'll see where I have repeatedly requested this to be done in order to streamline and make us more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
I'm not opposed to a salary study, but I want you to know that every time I sit down in negotiations with the unions, they provide me with a salary study, and they point out to me that Lorain employees are underpaid compared to other employees throughout this region. So a salary study can be a positive thing, can also be an eye-opener to find out how we compare to other cities in the area with similar populations. But they provide these things to me every time we meet. When we start talking about salary, they give me comparables to other cities, and I'll share it with you sometime.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Fallis?
Well, if that's the case, and it's independent, then we won't want to waste our taxpayers' money to do a salary study that you already have information on. So I would respectfully ask that you would consider doing the non-union folks, do a salary study for those, so we can get some independent numbers and make those sound recommendations accordingly based upon independent analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. No further discussion. Receive and file, please. Item 6, correspondence from other governmental agencies.
We have none.
Item 7, correspondence from the general public.
First item is email correspondence from Rudy Breglia advising Ohio House Bill 166 will provide $20 million in the 2021 budget to assist school districts in purchasing new buses, which include lap shoulder seatbelt installation in at least one of the new buses. And all members did receive copies.
Mr. Fallis?
Yeah, just a comment. I spoke with Mr. Sturgill of the Lorain School Board. He informed me that the Lorain City Schools still do not own buses. They don't employ people to drive buses. That's done by contract services. So we wouldn't really necessarily need to forward this to them because they do not have authority to make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. Receive and file. Item B.
The next item, we have email correspondence from Catherine Kennedy regarding the NOPEC aggregation program, and she is requesting an in-depth review of Lorain's future participation in this program, and all members do have copies.
No comments. Receive and file, please. Item C.
Okay, Mr. President, at this time we have a request to waive the 72-hour rule and add additional correspondence from Catherine Kennedy on the agenda for consideration.
Proceed. Ms. Brzezowski?
I will make that motion.
Support. Mr. Thornsberry?
Support.
Please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Well, by the time we get used to it, we'll be back to the...
You got it. You got it, Mary.
Okay, we have correspondence from Ms. Kennedy dated April 16th regarding the issues surrounding the water sewer funds and the operating policies in the Utilities Department. She is also requesting a Citizens Committee be formulated to work in conjunction with the Streets and Utility Committee in reviewing the requested information.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to send this to Streets and Utilities. Again, this is a committee meeting / work session that we've been anxious to hold, but with everything going on, we just have not been able to do that. I also believe at this point, I think today's public hearing that had 0 calls from the public is a very good indication that trying to do this electronically through a Zoom or something like that is just not what's best right now. I think our best bet is waiting until we can actually get the public in here to get public comment. So again, my intentions are to hold this in my committee once we can get folks back in here and actually do it. So with that, I move to send it to Streets and Utility. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brzezowski?
I'll support that.
Motion made to send to Streets Committee.
All in favor, say aye.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Thornsberry.
That's it. Down to committee
Okay.
reports.
Item 8, committee
We
reports.
have none.
Item 9, legislation first reading.
Introduced by Mrs. Springowski, a resolution proclaiming April 28th, 2020 as Workers' Memorial Day in the city of Lorain, Ohio.
Ms. Brigowski,
Motion to suspend the three reading rule, please.
second. Mr. Fallis,
Support motion.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Any discussion? No discussion. Ms. Brigowski,
I would move for passage.
Mr. Fallis.
Support motion.
We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay. Excuse me. Demakia. Fallis.
Aye.
Springowski.
Aye.
McFarland.
Aye.
Carter. Argenti.
Aye.
Moon. Shawver.
Aye.
And Thornsberry.
Aye.
Resolution is passed.
Ms. Henley?
And Mr. Carrion. We didn't amend it today.
Oops.
Oh, boy.
See how that
Hold on.
6-foot distancing works.
Okay, Henley.
Aye.
Carrion.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking up, folks. No problem.
Okay, next item.
Item B,
Introduced by Mr. Carrion, a resolution of intent to approve the addendum to the City of Lorraine's current EDA Title IX revolving loan fund plan that was approved by EDA on 7/10/1997 for the purpose of assisting current EDA Title IX loan holders during the COVID-19 pandemic and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Carrion,
Yes, at this time, I would like to suspend the three reading rule, please.
Ms. Brigowski,
Support.
please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Carrion.
Yeah, just one question. Under the whereas where it mentions the City of Lorain Loan Committee, who is in that committee?
Mr. Upton.
The City of Lorain Loan Committee, that would be Don Zaleski from the Law Director's Office, BHP Director, myself, the Mayor, and the Financial Officer, which is right now Robin Davey from BHP.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Carter.
Yes, through the floor to, Safety Service Director. The loans, let me see. Is this to give them assistance for the 2 months?
No, so these are outstanding loans that are already in our EDA loan portfolio. Robin had reached out to EDA on behalf of some of the existing borrowers about the process to give some relief to those that may be facing financial hardship from the pandemic. EDA set forth a process by which we have to amend our rules to allow relief. So this particular resolution is just the last step for us to be able to give relief to our current borrowers who are experiencing trouble due to COVID-19.
So do they need to apply?
No. So these are already existing loans. These are people who have had loans. We're just giving them 2 months of forbearance so that they can, weather the storm of the pandemic.
Okay, and just for clarity, is it an automatic? Does it happen automatically?
Oh, okay. So I misunderstood. The people seeking relief have already applied to us. So yes, the business owners would have to apply. Anyone who has an existing loan would have to apply for the forbearance. But this was predicated by business owners reaching out to Robin, and then Robin reaching out to the agency to see the appropriate regulations that we had to go through to get this done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carrion.
Yeah, based on the number of loans, do we have an idea of how many loans and what the value is? And obviously, we're looking at collecting this money, but then on the back end.
Correct. It would just extend the amortization, I hate that word, that period 2 months out to the back end of the loan. I believe there was just 2 applicants at this time, but now that this is public, we may see more. And we're more than happy to provide a breakdown of the outstanding balances of those applicants.
And just one more question. Typically, those EDA loans are large loan amounts. Would that have any impact on the city's budget in terms of the program income that they would be allocating for the first?
So that program income, as you well know, goes into a kind of a lockbox that we can't touch at this point in time because it's economic development related, and you know, there's some issues with the business development revolving loan fund. So it has no net effect on operations of the department, the budget, anything like that. It just affects when that money comes into our program income account.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fallis.
Yeah, just comment. I'm glad to see that this deferment is coming in place. Obviously, there's a lot of companies out there that could use a couple months deferment, and I'm glad to hear that it's not. It is a deferment, and it's not a forgiveness of debt. So, job well done.
No further discussion. Mr. Carrion.
Yeah, this time I'd like to move for passage.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Thornsberry. Aye. Mr. Shaver.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
Moon. Aye. Argenti.
Aye.
Carter.
Aye.
McFarland.
Aye.
Henley.
Aye.
Springowski.
Aye.
Fallis.
Aye.
Demakia. And the resolution is passed.
Thank you. Item C.
Next item is introduced by Mr. Argenti, an ordinance approving the chief of police through the mayor of the city of Lorain, Ohio, to accept the award of a 2020 Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor Grant from the Ohio Attorney General's Office.
Mr. Argenti.
Thank you. Move for suspension of the 3 reading rule.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? No discussion. Mr. Fallis.
It's always good to see us getting some financial assistance, but more importantly, having the appropriate tools to be safe out in the public with our police officers. So glad to see this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. No further discussion. Mr. Argenti.
Yeah, just to add this, you know, this is very needed and very appreciated for our police officers. Move for passage.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia. Fallis. Springowski.
Aye.
Henley.
Aye.
McFarland.
Aye.
Carter.
Aye.
Argenti.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
Shaver.
Aye.
Thornsberry.
Aye.
And the ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item D.
Next item is introduced by Mr. Thornsberry, an ordinance amending ordinance 48-18, section 11.2, establishing the compensation, benefits, and terms of employment for managers and professional employees and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Thornsberry.
Move for suspension of the rules.
Mr. Fallis.
Support motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Fallis.
Yes, I was contacted by Auditor Shaver, and she asked if this piece of ordinance could go to committee. There's a little bit of cleanup, I guess, needs to be done, and if you would like to speak on that to City Council, you can. Or if Council has any questions, they can address Auditor Shaver.
Motion to send to committees is always in order. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Fallis?
Yes, I make a motion to send it to committee, yes.
Okay. Ms. Springowski.
Yes, I'd also like to see it go to committee, because when we are looking at the economic situation because of the pandemic, we may not be able to do certain things that we'd like to do, and we have to be very careful with our funds and looking at all of this. So I think we need to have a serious, in-depth discussion in the form of a committee meeting.
I wholly agree. Motion to send to committee made by Fallis, seconded by Ms. Springowski. We'll have a roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Thornsberry. Aye. Mr. Shaver.
Aye.
Mr. Carrion.
Aye.
Ms. Moon. Mr. Argenti.
Aye.
Mrs. Carter. Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Ms. Henley.
Aye.
Ms. Springowski.
Aye.
Dallas.
Aye.
Demakia. Okay, the motion to refer to committee carries.
Thank you.
We have too many left. Can't turn them all on.
Item E,
We're limited. Next item is introduced by Mr. Thornsberry, an ordinance amending ordinance 47-18, section 10.2, establishing the compensation, benefits, and terms of employment for all classified and unclassified non-bargaining employees of the city of Lorain, excluding elected officials, managers, and professional employees, and the chief of police, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Thornsberry.
Seeing how we did the other one, Mr. President, I would also then move to send this one to committee if Mr. Fallis is willing to have it.
Oh,
Mr. Fallis.
I would support sending that to the finance committee, yes.
Motion to send to committee made by Mr. Thornsberry, seconded by Mr. Fallis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Matter moves to committee. Okay, down to item F.
Yes.
Introduced by Mr. Fallis, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds and a maximum principal amount of $2,800,000 for the purpose of refunding notes originally issued to pay the cost of streetscape improvements as further described herein, together with any necessary appurtenances thereto, and to pay the cost of issuance for said notes, authorizing the execution and delivery of standby note purchase agreement, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Fallis.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Argenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to the auditor, on this, excuse me, on the standby purchase agreement, that essentially the state of Ohio is purchasing the note for a period of 1 year. Is that?
Through the chair to Councilman Argenti, no, we will be selling notes in the standard operating procedure at this point. We did receive good news from our bond counsel today, or our underwriter. They actually said that the rates did come down a little bit, so that will be helpful to the city. We will be selling them in the same manner we always do.
Okay, so,
That's just terminology that's in there.
okay, so the state isn't taking this note then?
No.
Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Sure.
Question, Mr. Argenti. A lot of us, I'm sure, didn't know the answer till Ms. Schauber gave it to us. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Fallis.
I move for passage.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia? Fallis?
Aye.
Springowski?
Aye.
Henley?
Aye.
McFarland?
Aye.
Carter? Argenti?
Aye.
Moon? Carrion?
Aye.
Schauber?
Aye.
Thornsberry?
Aye.
The ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item G.
Okay, the next item is introduced by Mr. Thornsberry, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Safety Service of the City of Lorain, Ohio, to enter into a participation agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation pursuant to Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code to purchase sodium chloride directly and exclusively from the vendor awarded the 2020-2021 ODOT Sodium Chloride Winter Contract number 018-21 for Lorain County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Thornsberry.
I move for suspension of the rules.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Argenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair, the service director, the
we had such a light winter this year. The amount that we're purchasing, what did we use last winter with such a light winter, and how much do we have left? And that 3,500 tons, how does that equate to what we purchased last year?
I will defer that answer to Director Garcia, who is well versed in our current salt and sodium chloride supply.
Through the chair to Councilman Argenti, we average usually 5,500 to 6,000 ton of salt a year. This year we used 3,500 ton. We have 2,000, just shy of 2,500 ton left over. So that's where I got the 3,500 number for.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Oh, okay. No further discussion. Mr. Thornsberry.
I move for passage.
Ms. Brinkowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Thornsberry.
Aye.
Schauber.
Aye.
Carrion. Moon. Argenti. Carter. McFarland. Henley. Springowski.
Aye.
Fallis. And Demakia. The ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item H.
Next item is introduced by Mr. Thornsberry, an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director of the City of Lorain, Ohio, to become a member of the Ohio Wastewater Agency Response Network to assist the City of Lorain's Utility Department in the form of personnel, equipment, materials, and supplies in the event of emergency that disrupt public utilities.
Mr. Thornsberry.
I move for suspension of the rules.
Ms. Brinkowski.
Support.
Please, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Fallis.
It's just always good to, cities developing a plan B for emergency situations, so I'm glad to see this ordinance before us, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No further comments? Mr. Thornsberry?
Yes, I too would like to commend the administration for working towards some regionalization. I think that's a big future for local government. And with that, I will move for passage.
Ms. Brinkowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Demakia. Fallis. Springowski.
Aye.
Henley. McFarland. Carter. Moon. Argenti. Moon. Carter. I'm sorry, Carrion. Mr. Carrion.
That's an aye, yeah.
Schauber. And Thornsberry.
Aye.
And the ordinance is passed.
Excellent. Item I.
Okay. Next item is introduced by Mr. Fallis, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety Service of the City of Lorain, Ohio, to enter into a contract with ComDoc for the leasing of copiers, printers, and document imaging for the City of Lorain, Ohio through Sourcewell National Cooperative Purchasing Program without bid pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 9.48B.
Mr. Fallis.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Ms. Brinkowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Fallis.
Yes, earlier this afternoon, I got a phone call or email from Mr. Comer indicating the necessity to get this particular ordinance passed tonight. I guess according to the agreement, if we pass that and it's fulfilled before April 30th, we would get a 90-day deferment on our payments for this, which would be very, very helpful concerning the current economic climate that we're in. So if anybody on council has any further questions, I'm sure Mr. Comer could ask those. If not, if there's no further questions, I would move for passage.
Mr. Carrion.
Yeah, just a question. We're looking at $3,600 a month for the lease, about $43,800 for the year. How much are we paying MT right now? Because I believe their contract is up at this time.
evening. Yeah, MT Business has, they were bought out this year by Xerox. Xerox is also owned, they also own ComDoc, so MT Business and ComDoc were blended into one company under the Xerox label. That contract expires in June of this year. I believe our payment on that is about $2,700 a month. To look at this contract in its whole part, though, you have to look at the maintenance. We pay maintenance on all of our printing and copying fleet by impression. One of the good places where we're going to save a lot of money is on those impressions. Right now, we pay 0.0054 cents per impression on a copy machine. That's going down to 0.0029. Our color copies are going from a nickel a page to 0.029 cents a page, so just under 3 cents a page. We will get quite a bit of savings out of our impressions. We pay right now about $3,000 to $3,200 a month for those impressions and maintenance on our machines. And that fee should go down to about $1,800 to $2,000, depending upon the number of impressions. The 90-day deferral of our payments for this lease will save over $10,000, actually almost $11,000 this year. There's also a $10,000 rebate in this contract for us to upgrade the document imaging system, which is used by the clerk of council. We also use it in engineering department and other contracts and a couple other places. So we get a $10,000 rebate of that fund. So I went and did some math this morning, and it's some interesting math. So the impact on the budget for this year, just for 2020, because we defer 5 payments on this lease, or 3 payments on this lease, it's only going to cost the city $896 more this year than it would be if we stayed with our current vendor with a new maintenance contract. And that $890 gets divided between general fund, utilities, courts, and CDBG.
If I could follow, thank you for the explanation. My question would be, looking at the next year, looking at a full calendar year based on the past history in terms of the impression, in terms of the maintenance, what you're saying is if we look aggregate, combine all of those factors, you're estimating about a $10,000 savings by going to this new system, or is that a fair assessment, or did I miss something?
Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head while we're sitting here, but somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait up, Mr. Comer, if there's any other questions for you. Mr. Argenti.
Yeah, just briefly, I noticed there were a couple addendums, which was they eliminated the escalators, so there will be no increases in these prices during the full term, the 5 years of that contract. So that 5 years down the road, those prices are going to really be looking pretty good. So I don't know if you negotiated that addendum or...
Those addendums come with the sourcing alliance agreement, which is kind of like the state contract. It's a lot cleaner and better than the state contract, though.
Yeah, down the road, yes, very good.
Mr. Carrion.
Yeah, one more question, and this is probably for the administration in general. But looking at how technology has impacted everyone's lives at home and in the business world, does the city have a plan going forward to implement a policy to reduce impressions, to reduce the paper waste, to go to a more digital format that will allow you to still print essential documents, but to focus on the bulk of it to be digitally, and you can then save on a lot of those impressions, a lot of those maintenance costs, because that's what we're seeing throughout in the business world. You go to many progressive offices, you don't see filing cabinets. It's all done digitally, and that would be a good way to cut some of those costs.
So the long and the short answer is yes. We are kind of working towards that. I know Mr. Comer and I have had several conversations about what are the lessons that we learned from COVID-19. I know personally, myself and Mr. Comer have been reading a book about the digital transformation of government, and we're really thinking in that vein of not just doing digital and having digital transaction, but being a digital unit of government, and what does that mean for the city of Lorain? So those are kind of really existential questions about how we operate as a business. And so Dave and I have had some preliminary conversations about how do we not just do digital, but be digital to know that if a COVID-19 type pandemic happens again, we have the processes in place because we've implemented lessons learned from a debrief that we can then be much more agile. So yes, those conversations are ongoing. Sometimes it comes down to the preference of the individual. Some people like a highlighter and pen and focus better when they're reading, and some people do better on a PDF document or something like that. So as much as we can, we're trying to reduce paper waste, reduce impressions, and be as digital as possible at this point in time.
Book's a real page turner, by the way. But to add to that, this document imaging system that we're looking to move to we use what's called DocuWare now. We're moving to a cloud solution, which is called DocuShare, very unique. But we do believe that this is going to put us in a better position for doing digital imaging of city documents, whether they be documents in the court system, in our deeds in our engineering department, or ordinances here in city council, payroll records. We're looking to move all of those things to a digital platform.
That would be great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Brangowski.
Yeah, I like it because it provides transparency. Because we can put documents more that when we have it digital, it's easier for the public to be able to find it on the website and actually see it for themselves. This way, they're not saying we're hiding anything from them. They can go download a copy of it or read it for themselves, whatever. But I commend you on that. I hope that we get a robust process in place so that if the second wave does hit, that we are ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Great discussion, great comments. Thank you for your answers, Mr. Comer. At this time, Mr. Fallis.
Move for passage.
Ms. Brangowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia. Ballas.
Aye.
Springowski.
Aye.
Henley. Aye. McFarland.
Aye.
Carter. Argenti. Aye. Moon. Aye. Carrion. Aye. Shawver. Aye. And Thornsberry. Aye. Ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item J.
Introduced by Mrs. Springowski, an ordinance amending Chapter 1537.07, definitions of Chapter 1509 of the Lorain Codified Ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Brangowski.
Move for suspension of the 3 reading rule, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? No discussion. Ms. Brangowski.
I would now move for passage, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I support.
Roll call, please.
Thornsberry. Aye. Shawver.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
Moon. Aye. Argenti.
Aye.
Carter. Aye. McFarland.
Aye.
Henley. Aye. Springowski.
Aye.
Ballas. Aye. Demakia. Aye. And the ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item K.
Introduced by Mrs. Springowski, an ordinance amending Chapter 1537.08, housing license required of the Lorain Codified Ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Brangowski.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Mr. Carrion? No discussion. Ms. Brangowski.
I would move for passage, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I support.
Roll call, please.
Thornsberry. Aye. Shawver.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
Moon. Aye. Argenti.
Aye.
Carter. Aye. McFarland.
Aye.
Henley. Aye. Springowski.
Aye.
Ballas.
Aye.
And Demakia. The ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item L.
Introduced by Mrs. Springowski, an ordinance amending Chapter 1509.99, failure to comply with a notice or neglect of maintenance of the Lorain codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Springowski.
Suspension of the three reading rule, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I will support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? No discussion? Ms. Springowski.
I would now move for passage, please.
Mr. Carrion.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Demakia. Vallis.
Aye.
Springowski.
Aye.
Henley. McFarland. Carter. Argenti. Moon. Carrion.
Aye.
Shawver. And Thornsberry. The ordinance is passed.
Thank you. Item M.
Next item is introduced by Mrs. Springowski, an ordinance amending ordinance 26-20 and section 913.303, sanitary sewer rental charge of the codified ordinances of the city of Lorain and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Springowski.
I would move for suspension of the three reading rule, please.
Mr. Carrion.
I don't support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Did he say yes or
He said
no?
he-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second, you need a second, not for me. I didn't have my mic on.
Oh,
I didn't put a request.
excuse me. Ms. Henley.
I support.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, one no. Okay,
One or two? Do
Two.
okay.
you want to do roll call?
Roll call, please.
Demakia. This is on suspension of the rule. Vallis. Springowski.
Aye.
Henley.
Aye.
McFarland. Carter. Argenti. Moon. Carrion.
Nay.
Shawver. And Thornsberry. Okay, the rule is not suspended. We have 4 dissenting votes. Voting no are Mr. Fallis, Mr. Carrion, Mr. Shawver, and Mr. Thornsberry. The matter moves to a second reading.
Thank you. Item N.
Next item, introduced by Mr. Fallis, an ordinance amending ordinance 26-20 and section 913.303, sanitary sewer rental charge of the codified ordinances of the city of Lorain, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Fallis.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Need a second.
Argenti.
What was it?
Argenti.
Oh, excuse me. Mr. Argenti?
Support.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Okay, we'll do roll call for suspension of the rule. Demakia. Fallis.
Yes, aye.
Springowski.
No.
Henley.
No.
McFarland. Carter. Argenti.
Aye.
Moon.
Nay.
Carrion.
Nay.
Shawver.
Nay.
And Thornsberry.
Nay.
Okay, that is, motion is soundly defeated. Voting in favor of the motion were Mr. Argenti and Mr. Fallis. Matter moves to a second reading.
Thank you. Item O.
Where are we? Okay, Mr. President, at this time, we have requests to waive the rule and add 3 additional items to the agenda for consideration this evening. They're items O, P, and Q. Item O is a resolution regarding funding for the COVID-19 expenses. Item P is an ordinance invoking the then and now for the utility department. And item Q is a de-appropriating ordinance. We'll need a motion, please.
Thank you. Ms. Springowski.
I would move that we waive the three reading rule, waive the 72-hour rule, and add the ordinance to the agenda for consideration.
Mr. Shawver.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Proceed.
Okay, item O, introduced Introduced by Mr. Demakia, a resolution supporting the adoption of additional legislation by the United States Congress in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically enacting legislation that will provide unrestricted funds directly to local governments and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Demakia.
Yes, currently there is funding here.
Suspend.
Motion to suspend the three reading rule.
Correct. Thank you. Ms. Springowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Demakia.
And currently there is funding out there for relief for municipalities and cities, but a lot of that funding is very restrictive and targets much of the larger cities, which means that smaller municipalities like Lorain gets left out of that funding. So there is consideration in the legislation to consider additional funding that would support the smaller municipalities like Lorain. So that's where this resolution comes from, and I urge you to support it so we can encourage our legislators to pass this so that the city of Lorain can get some relief just like some of the other major cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? No further comments? Mr. Demakia.
I move for passage.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Thornsberry. Shaver. Carrion. Moon. Argenti. Carter. McFarland. Henley. Springowski.
Aye.
Ballas. Demakia.
Aye.
And the resolution is passed unanimously.
Thank you. Item P.
Introduced by Mr. Fallis, an ordinance authorizing the auditor of the city of Lorain, Ohio, to pay 2 invoices submitted by the Utilities Department that invoke the then and now certification exception process as per Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.41, and to pay for said invoices and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Fallis.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Ms. Springowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Fallis.
Move for passage.
No. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry.
No discussion.
Any discussion? No discussion. Mr. Fallis.
Move for passage.
Ms. Springowski.
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Demakia.
Aye.
Fallis.
Aye.
Springowski.
Aye.
Henley. McFarland. Carter. Argenti. Moon. Carrion. Shaver. Thornsberry. The ordinance is passed unanimously.
Thank you. Item Q.
Introduced by Mr. Fallis, an ordinance de-appropriating money for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Lorain, State of Ohio, as passed by Budget Ordinance 25-20, beginning January 1, 2020, and ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Fallis.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Mr. Shaver. Support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? No discussion. Mr. Fallis?
Move for passage.
Mr. Shaver?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Thornsberry. Shaver.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
Moon. Argenti. Carter. McFarland. Henley. Springowski. Fallis.
Aye.
Demakia. And the ordinance is passed unanimously.
Thank you. Item 10, legislation, second reading.
We have none.
Item 11, legislation, third reading.
We have none.
Item 12, committee calls.
We do not have any committee calls, but our next regular meeting will be held on Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Item 13, miscellaneous concerns from council. If you have a concern, please put on your light. Ms. Springowski.
Yes, first of all, I would like to congratulate Joel Arredondo, our council president, on the birth of his granddaughter. She is very cute.
Thank you.
And I would also like to commend my colleague, Councilman Demakia, on his recommendations for the budget. These were things that were well thought out and considered, and I'm in support of them, and I look forward to further discussion on them. But I'd like to thank you, Tony. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Springowski, for your kind words. Mr. Carrion.
Yes, through the chair to members of council and the administration. First item, I want to really thank the administration. The Grove Avenue corridor, 57, it was maintained this morning. There was a crew there cutting the grass, picking up the trash. And what I wanted to say was thank you. Since the first of the year, we've seen that area, 28th Street, Pearl Avenue, maintained. Snow removal. We can actually see the asphalt when it snows. And we like to see that. The grass being maintained, the trash being picked up. I mean, that's what we're talking about in terms of maintaining a level of pride that our community can rally behind it. So thank you. And I know Lori's been working hard with her team, but we appreciate the action that we're seeing. The second comment that I have is something that just happened in the last day or so. I was approached by quite a few members of my ward asking if we could do a banner program like we did for the holidays, but in commemoration of our seniors, high school seniors that will not most likely be having a traditional graduation. So we posted something online and the response just became overwhelming. I'm telling you, overwhelming. Over 70 to 80 orders in about an hour and a half for these type of banners. In the process, I received a lot of information from the schools, from other council members, and the concern that it would be wonderful to have this throughout the city. To have these banners throughout the city, perhaps the city and the school district could collaborate, reduce costs in making the banners, make this a joint effort so every student that's graduating could see their banner up as we go through the city of Lorain. I'm bringing that up because that's my goal, is to see the city shine as a whole, and if that's something that could be worked out, that would be great. We do have many other folks that are not strictly from Lorain City Schools. They're from other schools in the county, colleges that are from Lorain that are interested in purchasing banners in the program that I listed yesterday. But I want to make sure that what we do here is inclusive, it is collaborative, it includes everyone. So if we need to pump the brakes on what's going on that side to make it work for this as a city, by all means, I think that would be phenomenal and a great tribute for those students that will have a non-traditional graduation this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion, for your efforts and for your community service, not just for your ward, but the whole community. And just to add, for those who might not know, the governor did suspend all classes through the year. It was on his news conference today, so we will not be seeing students back at the high schools or any of the schools. Any other comments? Mr. Thornsberry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to the administration, quite understandably, I know you guys have been really busy with COVID-19 stuff, but do we have any update in regards to the audit that's being done for water and sewer rates? As we have two items that did not meet suspension today, but they will be coming back to the agenda next month. And any information could help people make decisions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Thornsberry. Comments, Mr. Mayor?
We did receive an update from CT Consultants, and they had indicated that the 2016 recap study, that was the original group that did the rate study for the water and sewer utilities, was the primary reference used by the city in rate adjustments. So actually CT Consultants kind of relied on that when they made their recommendations. We reviewed their findings and recommended some revisions at the time, primarily to decrease their recommended readiness to serve charges. The purpose now, and as recommended, is to conduct an audit of those projections and how that has affected the fund sustainability. This office held a couple of work sessions and received the city's updated accounting of revenue, capital projections, and expenditures. We agree that the projected expenditures and income from the recap study contained irregularities, and much of the expenses on both the labor side and the capital side did not actually materialize as estimated in the last 2 to 3 years. Going forward with the cash balances and the important factor of EPA compliant issues like asset management, we find the city has adequately accounted for them in the expenditures. Other projections in both the water and sewer funds also appear to reasonably address their funding either as cash or debt service. With those values inputted, an analysis of the water fund reverted the readiness to serve charge and the rates to those in 2017. So that's one of the reasons that we did back to 2017. The result is a negative cash flow, but given the carryover balance, the fund is sustainable for at least 2 years, at which time is important for the city to audit the fund and conduct a review to determine future adjustments, which we intend to do at the end of this year. The fund will reach a critical point recommended for your utility to maintain a reserve for emergency and debt service agreed to be $10 million. So they're telling us that we want to aim for a $10 million reserve in the water fund. The Utilities Department maintained the current rates in the sewer fund. We again find that due to the cash balance, the fund is sustainable for a few years, even with a negative annual cash flow and declining balances. It is recommended to review this fund at the same time as the water fund, but current projections indicate the fund will carry sufficient reserves for another couple years. So again, this is going to be in committee. We'll be presenting some additional information at the time it comes to committee, but we've tried to be proactive on this particular issue for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Thornsberry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are they ready to present in committee, or they're not fully done with what they're doing yet?
I'm going to have to get in touch with them and see if they're ready to do a presentation at a committee. Make sure that they are. I'm not sure. Paul, do you have any update on that?
They're done with their work.
Okay, so we would probably be able to have them here at a committee meeting to give some input to council for your consideration. And again, I just want to tell you that I think it was a good idea to put those things into committee. When it was passed in 2017 and the rates were increased, they were kind of passed as an emergency. A lot of questions weren't answered, and hopefully we're going to be able to answer those questions, and then council's going to be able to make a good decision on this issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm hoping that we can have a normal committee meeting with the public as early as June, and that would be my intention, would be to call it then. So I'll coordinate with the administration. Mr. President, if there are no more comments?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thornsberry. Once again, thank you for the well wishes to my family. I also have some more good news. In December, our Police Chief, Mr. Sal Rivera, retired after 49 years of service. We had the presentation here. I notified everybody that we were establishing an endowment fund in his name. $10,000 was the monies needed to establish the fund through the Hispanic Fund Community Foundation. I'm happy to report that at the beginning of at the end of last month, March, beginning of April, we reached our goal. We've exceeded it. I still have outstanding pledges from people who pledged and, kind of forgot about it. And just a little reminder, matter of fact, I received a couple checks today as we sat here. But once again, I'd like to thank everybody who did support this. You can still continue to do that. Once again, what can we give Sal after 49 years? Another plaque for his wall, or a gift card at a restaurant. But thank you, everybody, showing your support, and also your love for the man who gave his roughly 2/3 of his life to the city of Lorain. So thank you all. Now, Mr. Thornsberry.
Yes, at this time, I would like to motion to move into an executive session in accordance with ORC 121.22G3, so in conference with the public body's attorney regarding disputes that are subject of pending and/or imminent court action.
Ms. Brigowski.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, we have to vote by roll call for that.
Okay, I stand corrected. Roll call, please.
Demakia. Aye. Fallis. Aye. Spriyowski.
Aye.
Henley. Aye. McFarland. Aye. Carter. Where is she? Argenti. Aye. Moon. Aye. Carrion. Aye. Schauber,
Aye.
and Thornsberry.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
So we'll clear the,
5 minutes, we'll have our executive session. We'll clear the room, please.